Hello, everyone. My name is Orchita Chakraborty, and this is my Polygence project called The Adventures of Brian the Brain and Chrissy CRISPR. This is a story behind a comic book on Alzheimer's disease awareness. And before I like to continue on, I'd like to give a special shout out to my Polygence mater, Katie, for helping me, supporting me throughout this whole process and endeavor. So with that being said, let's go right into it. Just a fun little coincidence I thought I'd share with you all. Today is actually World Alzheimer's Awareness Day. So yeah, just a fun coincidence. All right, so for table of contents, I'm going to be starting off by explaining my big idea. So this is going to be like how I came up with all of this and basically the background information for what led to me creating the comic. Next, I'll be explaining my research that I've done throughout this comic, and including important stuff that you guys need to know about Alzheimer's disease, as well as possible treatment methods. Finally, I'll be showing you guys how I made my comic book, including some small comic strips and behind the scenes of it. And finally, I'll be explaining to you guys about my outcome, so what I hope to achieve with this comic moving forward. So let's get into the big idea. When I was 7 years old, my dad and my whole family actually learned that my grandfather was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. And at first, it turned out to be a relatively small thing. He kept on forgetting like simple things like where he left his glasses or his paperwork. But then as his disease progressed and as the years went by, he kept on like forgetting several things, including like my own name and his son's own name. He kept on forgetting like family members and friends, and it kept on growing like bigger and bigger. So when we brought him to the doctors, they were completely confused. They had no idea how to even treat his case. They had no idea even like if he had it or not. So ever since then, I was really interested in this disease, and I had a lot of questions that I wanted to ask. Like, why isn't there any cure for it, or why don't we know so much about it? So how it's been continuing, last year when I was a freshman in high school, one of my favorite subjects was honors biology. And although I loved learning almost every single topic in it, I was really, really interested in the topic of genetics and gene editing. What I found out when I took a dive deeper into it was that the field of genetics proves to be a massive game changer in the field of medicine, which got me like really intrigued. Like, how is such a new, like relatively new field of science this good in medicine? So that's how I began my journey into the world of Alzheimer's disease and hopefully finding a way to use gene editing technologies to find a cure for Alzheimer's. Now for some important information for my topic. Let's start with the basics. Alzheimer's disease is the seventh leading cause of death in the United States, and around the world, 55 million people are living with Alzheimer's disease, and 70% of these dementia cases have been confirmed to be AD. So to clear up any confusion, dementia is like an umbrella term for neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's disease. So the fact that 70% of dementia cases have been confirmed to be Alzheimer's shows that this is a really impactful and big disease. And it's kind of concerning how we don't have so much info revolving around Alzheimer's disease yet. So now for some commonly affected brain parts. So first we have the hippocampus, and actually I'm just going to move one slide here. The hippocampus is located in the middle, like this brown section over here. That's where the hippocampus is located. The main function in a healthy brain is to store your thoughts and memories. So for long-term storage, this is basically the place to go. And it also contains some of a fluid known as cerebrospinal fluid, which actually helps to cushion the brain. But for a patient with Alzheimer's disease, there's a buildup of this fluid, and too much of it can add pressure to the brain. Next, we have the cerebral cortex. So this is actually the pink stuff around your brain, including the brain folds, which are called sulci and gyri. The main point of the cerebral cortex is to help in problem solving. It helps you deal with emotions, and it even develops your own personality. And the point of the sulci and gyri are basically to like help shrink the brain so that it can fit into a skull. So think of it like as a stuffed animal, and you're trying to put that into a small container. So you're gonna have to squish the stuffed animal in order to put it in the container, but it's gonna have all wrinkles and stuff. And so you can think of those wrinkles as the sulci and gyri. For an Alzheimer's disease patient, the cerebral cortex does become smaller, and so do the sulci and gyri. They shrink and disappear. So that relates to how Alzheimer's patients, they have problems in their emotions or their personalities, and even like in problem solving. So that's really one of the main effects of Alzheimer's disease. Finally, the most important part of the brain and also our whole body, the neurons. These little guys, they help pass signals and they actually control our everyday lives. Like when we're touching something, when we're smelling something, that's the neurons sending receptors to our brain to actually do that. So for Alzheimer's patients, the neurons die in great numbers, and I'll explain why in the next slide. So Alzheimer's disease is actually a genetically inherited disease, and it is inherited in an autosomal dominant pattern. So if one family member in the family tree has Alzheimer's disease, it's probably like it'll be more common for the next part of the generation to get it as well. However, some cases of Alzheimer's are sporadic, which means they happen randomly. And now, as I mentioned earlier, scientists are still not sure what the root cause of Alzheimer's is. They are suspecting a gene in chromosome 21, which is called the APP gene, and that codes for amyloid beta protein. These proteins generally help in neural growth and repair. And what happens is that in Alzheimer's patients there's a missense mutation, which causes the APP protein to not be cut properly. And actually like cutting them like with a little bit of excess protein on them, which makes them sticky. And that causes amyloid beta plaques. And you guessed it, they actually build up in the dendrites of the neuron, causing them to not send signals to other neurons as well. And that's why they die off in great numbers when in an Alzheimer's patient. Um, so how can gene editing help? Gene editing and gene therapies are actually a relatively new field in science, especially in medicine and treatment. However, they have been able to help reverse genetic disorders. One of the most common ones is CRISPR-Cas9. They've actually shown promising results in various diseases. And one example of that is sickle cell anemia. It's the first genetic disease to be treated using CRISPR-Cas9 and other genetic disease, like other genetic editing therapies. So with breakthroughs like these and findings like these, I feel like we're like 2 steps closer to finding a cure for Alzheimer's disease if we can use these genetic therapies for good use, especially for treating Alzheimer's disease. Now for some behind the scenes, these are some pages of my comic book. The whole story revolves around Brian the Brain over here and Chrissy CRISPR, who is a CRISPR-Cas9 protein. They are along the journey of the comic book, they're going to explain about what Alzheimer's disease is and how they can use CRISPR-Cas9 to help treat Alzheimer's disease. And this is some comic strip that I made. So now for my outcome, what I hope to achieve with my comic book. So before I talk about my motivation, I want to say the main goal of my comic book is to help explain Alzheimer's disease and genetic therapies to a wider audience, hopefully like simplifying it so that they can get into the details and learn more about the disease and the gene therapy being used. So that was my primary motivation. My other motivation was, well, because last year when I was a freshman, I took a graphic arts course and I immediately fell in love with the fact that you can do visual art on a computer. Actually, this is one of my projects which I made last year. I saw it was like really cool to like use all the different tools to make, like these vibrant art projects. And at the same time, last year when I needed help in some topics, especially in biology, for example, I found myself often going to YouTube and searching up the topic which I needed help with. And I came across this YouTube channel called the Amoeba Sisters. Um, and I'm pretty sure most people have heard of them. They actually deliver their content through small cartoon characters which explain the topic at a basic level and inspire you to go deeper into that topic. And I thought that really helped me learn a lot. And I thought maybe if I could use that technique and create a comic book with to help people understand more about Alzheimer's disease and gene therapies, maybe they can also in the future join research for it as well. So that was my main motivation. These are the apps that I used, Adobe Fresco and Adobe Photoshop. So my main goal goal is, as I said earlier, to reach a wider audience and to help readers understand Alzheimer's disease and gene therapy options so that they can have an interest in learning more about these topics. And yeah, so that's my presentation. Thank you so much for listening. And if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Orchita. I'm super curious. I mean, I haven't actually seen a student combine, graphic art and comic books and neuroscience before. What are you planning to do next?
Well, actually, I have not yet finished my comic book fully. I'm halfway done with it, but in the next coming months, I hope to like develop my comic book even more, come up with more ideas for maybe specific topics to be included. And hopefully maybe I could try to publish it in the coming years, maybe. That is like one of my main dreams actually, is to publish like a graphic novel, especially for readers to like learn about and get interested in science, especially. So make it like a call to action graphic novel, if you will. But yeah, that's all in the future.
That's
But
very cool, and I'm sure you will. That the illustrations were amazing. Thank you for sharing.
thank you.